to talk about text structure in nonfiction. Before we start though, let's take a peek in our Google Drive. On the board today, I told you to go into our shared folder and make copies and rename these 3 documents, so hopefully you've done that. Energy flows through ecosystems, external text structures, and what is a text structure. We'll be using these 2 bottom ones during the video today, and then this one at the top will be the activity that you'll do in your next rotation to show me that you understand today's lesson. So if you haven't made copies and renamed them, please stop the video and do that. Otherwise, we will keep on going. So text structure, what is it? Well, the definition says, how text is arranged, organized, or emphasized to help the reader monitor his comprehension. This phrase right here, help the reader monitor his comprehension. That just means to help you understand what you read. And you know we're talking about nonfiction, and we've talked about the fact that nonfiction text can be very difficult to read, more difficult than fiction. It often contains complicated ideas and vocabulary, and lots of times you're reading it because it's part of a class assignment. It's been assigned to you. It's not something that you chose to read, and that's going to make it harder to begin with. So anything that's going to help you understand what you read is a good thing. So we're going to talk about 2 different types of text structures in nonfiction. Today we're going to focus on external text structure, and the rest of the week we'll talk about internal text structure. I'll tell you briefly right now what each one is, and then we'll focus the rest of this video on external. We look at the term external text structure. I want you to notice the prefix X. Think of some other words you know. Exit is the one that comes to mind immediately for me. Exit, outside. External, you probably know, means outside. So we're talking about outside the text, how the actual page is organized. Whether you look at a textbook page, a magazine page, a newspaper page, or a web page, these are things before you even start reading that you're going to see on a page that help you know what this is going to be about. So it's outside. They immediately help you organize information. External text structures. Internal text structures. Here's another prefix, in, inside the text. How the actual writing is organized. When an author writes, they're going to write in a pattern, in a very logical way, so that your brain, when it's reading, can actually guess what's going to come next. You can recognize the pattern. Just like when you were in kindergarten or 1st grade, and your teacher might have said, okay, here's a square, a circle, a triangle. A square, a circle, what comes next? And you can immediately say triangle. Your brain likes logical patterns. And if something is written in a pattern, you will naturally kind of be able to guess what comes next. That keeps your brain focused, and it keeps you working on understanding the ideas. And these are actually called organizational patterns. There are 7 of them. And if you can try to identify them, that will definitely help you understand what you read. All right, so now let's focus on external. The easiest way for me to explain it is to show you. So let's say you're going over to science next, to Mrs. Waters' class. And she says, okay, we're going to read about ionic bonds today. Now that you're not actually going to be reading about ionic bonds, but it's a great example. So she gives you a choice. She says, I'm going to let you read one of 2 things. You could read this page, or you could read this page. Exactly the same information. Would you rather read this page, or would you rather read this page? Well, if you're anything like me, I think you'd want to read this one. It just looks easier to read. And the things that make it look easier are the external text structures. There's colored text, all different kinds of text. Some things looks different here, some colors. You've got little things over here, big numbers, and down at the bottom you even have a photograph and one of these little captions over here. And all of these things are external structures that are going to help organize the information. You have this worksheet, and I would like you to be completing it as I complete it. You can have 2 screens open and be typing on yours and watching on mine, or you can stop the video and make it windows bigger and smaller. That's up to you, whatever you're comfortable with. So right here at the top of this, we have a list of external text structures. These are the text structures that you will be responsible for. You may see on a test in class, may show up on the SOL. So I want you to make sure you know all of these. I'm first going to read through them. A lot of these you know, but some may be unfamiliar to you. So sidebar, underlining, indenting, italics, illustration, photography, headings, bold and colored print, subheadings, graphics, maps, charts and graphs, quotations, folio, map key and legend, highlighted text, columns, picture captions, and footnotes. Again, lots of them you may know, but there may be a few you don't. You have another document, one of the other documents that I shared with you, what is an external text pattern structure. And this is like a sheet of definitions for you. I'm just going to quickly go through it. You can use this for reference in the future. This is not an assignment. So we show things about titles. We have subheadings or headings. We talk about what a picture or a caption is, the little thing that describes the picture. The different ways that words can look. Bolded, bulleted. We're going to talk about what a bulleted word is. Italics, underlined, highlighted. Okay? Quotes, if you pull out someone's words and you make it larger. Sometimes you see that in a nonfiction article. A sidebar. We'll look at one of those in a minute too, and there's a definition of it. Charts and tables where you get information in a graph of some sort of chart. A diagram is a picture that has an explanation on it. A graph is very much like a chart, and a timeline. So all those are definitions that you may want to go back to. But I'm actually going to go right through this ionic bonds page, and we're going to be filling it in as we go. And we're going to look at all the parts of the page. We're going to start right here on the left. This whole section is to the side, and it gives you kind of side information, and it's called a sidebar. It doesn't have to be on the side. It could be on the top or the bottom, but it's usually information that's not part of the main article, but it is related to the article. So you see the word objectives, and here it's going to tell you what you're going to learn, some terms that you might want to know, and then a reading strategy. And down here you have some vocabulary. So this is all related to the main article about ionic bonds, and it's called a sidebar. Now this right here is focusing on these little dots. This could be in a sidebar, but it could also be in the main article. And this is what I was saying is called bulleted text. And those bullets are these dots. And it's a way of writing text in a shorter way. Notice they're not sentences, they're not paragraphs. It's taking the important information and just putting it right there so you can read it in a very simple way. Bulleted text. Down here, you can see this is yellow. This is highlighted text. And you guys know we highlight things in our docs all the times. Highlighted text. And you can do it in yellow, but you could do it in blue or green or pink. But it really makes the text pop, so you know it's an important word. And you can see here, it actually goes over to a definition. Sometimes it's just to emphasize it or something you want to remember or something you want to pop out at you. Down here is what's called a caption. Caption goes with a photograph, it could go with a graphic, it could go with a timeline or an illustration of some sort, and it's an explanation of what is in that picture. And we call that a caption. At the bottom of the page, we have something called a folio or footnote. And notice the word footnote. It's at the bottom of the page. And folio is the specific thing. It's the name of the chapter, the name of the section, the name of the author. And it's something that you should know is there. If you're trying to find out more information about where you are in the book, look at the folio in a textbook or a magazine. Newspapers have them too. Gives information. A footnote could be anything. It could be a folio, but it could be definitions. It's anything at the bottom of the page that gives you more information. Okay? Let's go up to the top of the next column here. And right here, ionic bonds. We know this is a title, or we often call it a heading. Okay? It tells you what is the whole passage about. I'm also going to give this a secondary name. I'm going to say this is also colored text. And you see lots of colored text on this page. A little further down, you see a smaller one that's forming ionic bonds, which is part of the ionic bonds topic. And down here you see a blue one even smaller, charged particles. Well, charged particles must have something to do with forming ionic bonds. And forming ionic bonds is one part of the topic of ionic bonds. So there are headings, and then there are subheadings. And they're smaller, and they're subcategories. So I want you to know the difference between a heading and a subheading. We skipped this one here. Let's go back to this. Do you see how this text looks a little bit different? It's kind of slanted. It's a little skinnier. We call that italics. And italics text, or italicized text, is another way of making text pop out at you. That's the author's way of saying, hey, this is kind of important, pay attention. And you could do that with bold, you could do it with highlighting, or you could do it with italics. And then the last one I want to look at right here, we know that that is a photograph. And again, it could be an illustration, it could be a diagram, it could be any of those things. So these are external text structures. Certainly not very difficult, things you see and know, but you just may not be paying attention to them. And now you know why they're there, what the purpose is. It's to help you understand. So that's our lesson. And our time is just about up, so we will change and rotate, and you guys will open up. Let me go back to Google for a second. You'll be doing energy flows through ecosystems, and you'll see that in this document, you see the text structures again. I asked you to bring your science book, and you're going to be reading pages 486 to 492. You're not going to be reading it. You're going to be reading it later. We'll be reading it later in our workshop on Thursday, Friday in science and English. But right now, I want you to look at those pages, and you'll see later, further down in the document, it's going to ask you to identify the different text structures that are on these pages. And then later in the week, we'll actually read it. But I want you to get comfortable with things that help you before you even start reading. Okay, our time is up, and let me know if you have any questions about external text patterns.